I'm a little out of shape for Zoom.
How are you,
I thought
man?
I, I thought I left this behind with
I know.
COVID.
It feels like a remnant of COVID that's just stuck around, hey?
I know. But anyway, good to see you.
Good
Sorry
to
I'm a
see
few
you.
minutes late.
I'm Sam. Nice to meet you. Matt's here as well.
Hey,
How's it
sorry. So I
going,
normally do
man?
the middays here. Sam's doing the interview. I was at Rock Search in 2002 when you guys won it with Hits FM, just so you know.
Whoa. Were
So
you working there at the time?
no, but I'm friends with Jason Barr. So
Okay,
I
yeah,
just wanted
yeah.
to say that even out here in Calgary, as soon as I heard the Trews are coming to Red Deer, I'm like, oh, I was there in 2002 when they won. So
That's that's ground zero, man.
anyway, that's all I have to say. He's doing the interview. Bye.
Cool, man. Good to
Quick
see you.
pop in. Awesome, man. Great to chat with you. You guys are coming by to play Bose on June 30th. We're stoked to see you. How you guys been?
Been good. Yeah, man. Summer's here again. The year flew by, but we're looking forward to hitting some festivals and some clubs and just be out playing in the Canadian summer. It's a good time to be out and about.
It's the best time to tour Canada for sure.
Yeah, and we haven't learned our lesson despite 20 years of history. We always tour in the winter. So anyway, it's good to do summer as well.
There's nothing like those harrowing bus trips through Canada in the middle of winter when you got a February show in Calgary and then Kelowna.
Yes, we've been there and we've done it over and over again. But it's part of what makes us Canadian bands. We can tough it out. We can get through that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. We just passed the House of Ill Fame 20th anniversary. You guys were, kind of doing some promotion and stuff of that on social media. Thinking back, on the journey from 20 years ago to now, how cool is it to look back on that record and kind of like the start for the band?
It's a bit humbling, at how quickly it can all go by. It kind of
Yeah.
blows my mind that it's been that long. But it was a good time to stop and just take stock of everything we'd sort of accomplished and sort of look back before we look ahead and do the next record. It was a fun project. Like putting together that box set together was,
Yeah.
I guess, a little bit of a COVID making lemonade out of lemons because we had all this time. So I started cataloging a lot of stuff, and it turns out we had quite a lot of stuff, and we unearthed, hard drives full of photographs, and we unearthed, recording sessions we thought were long lost that had demos and, the earliest takes of some of those songs. And so putting it together in a box set seemed like a natural fit. It was a fun thing to do, a bit of a labor of love. It took the better part of a year, and then we hit the road and did the tour in support of it, which was also really fun because we had never played that album in its entirety.
Really?
Like, no, not like all the way through in the right order. Like even back then, like by the time we released it, we had new songs that we were peppering in, and we would never
Yeah.
play it in the same order. So doing that was the first time, a first for us. So it was cool.
Yeah. It's interesting to ask bands about, what you've got in the archives, because I am sure there's tons and tons of stuff over your guys' recording career that just, it hasn't seen the light of day. And it's really cool to see bands go back and put that out. It's
Yeah, it's
unique.
cool. I think you can get lost in it. Like, it occurs to me like there's that much stuff sitting around for the second record and the third record and the fourth record. But at a certain point, you're not a band unless you're sort of pushing forward at the same time. So it's for me, it's all about balance. Like we try to write a lot of new material, but then sort of like every now and again take a minute to sort of like honor the catalog or where you've been and
Yeah.
while sort of forging ahead.
When you think back on that time, especially starting out as a band, did you ever imagine you guys would be where you guys are now compared to like 20 years ago?
We were living a day at a time. We were, dead broke musicians in our early 20s, living for the day, quite literally.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been the dream. If somebody had said, "What's your dream scenario?" It'd be like, "Well, if we're still doing this in 20 years and we're able to sustain a career for that long, that would be the ultimate goal." So, how realistic that felt to us at the time, I couldn't say. I
Yeah.
think we were just sort of focused on a day at a time back then, and we were playing so much. I mean, I think we did 200 shows in support of that
Whoa.
first record, yeah, over 2 years. So we just went and went and went and went, and everything was a first. We'd never played an arena before, and then we got to do that, and we'd never
Yeah.
gone overseas before, and we got to do that, and we'd never seen, the southern states before we got to do that. So everything was a first, and very exciting, but also flat broke, and
Yeah.
trying to keep a van on the road and trying to keep a band together through all that hecticness. So
Yeah.
yeah, we definitely didn't think from like a 30,000-foot view in those days.
It's funny, like the hungriness of an early band just trying to break it's unmatched. You talk to some other Canadian bands and it's like, yeah, like we played so many shows over the span of however many years, and it
Yeah.
blows my mind. Like I would burn out from that.
Well, there's a time and a place, it's easier to do it at 23 than it is at 43. There's
Yeah.
no doubt. But also, I think it's how real bands, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. To your point, every band I know that's really made it has had to go through that. And
Yeah.
I hope it's not going away, because it really does forge uh, real musicians, and it forges real chemistry amongst players, and it forges you creatively because you have all these shared experiences that you can then reflect on and write about. And I just hope it's not going away in the era of like the quick fix of social media, and
Yeah.
people can sort of have the illusion of a fan base and never leave their bedroom. I mean, that's going to breed some good stuff, I'm sure, that I'm not going to see. But for me, I think you got to get out in front of people, and I think venues are suffering now, more than they have in many years. So I hope bands can still keep that path alive.
Yeah, the old school touring method. I was gonna ask you about your guys' song Peace Jam that came out, because it did come out of a time where it was a difficult time for music fans. I mean, even for us, right? I mean, we went from in-person interviews to, Zooms and no
Yes.
shows and all that sort of stuff. So how's it been to get back out on the road and touring Canada, a little bit of the US, and doing these shows?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I mean, I don't think we'll ever take a show for granted again. I mean, we
Yeah,
couldn't, we never fathomed that it could go away, just like that.
I
And
know.
that's what happened. It was just the most bizarre time. I think um, we're all going to think of our lives as before and after the pandemic. I think it changed so much for so many people. But yeah, I mean, we're just happy to be back. And the one thing we did do is we wrote an awful lot. We did a lot of this style of writing. We would get on these kind of calls with friends, or with each other as bandmates, and work up some material. And I did a lot of demoing. I recorded a lot at my home studio.
Yeah.
So yeah, Peace Jam came out of that.
That's amazing. It's great to see you guys back out on the road. I was also seeing you guys were out playing Highway of Heroes at Juno Beach. For you guys as a band, what was that experience like? I saw the clip of it. I'm like, that is like just huge.
It was a big honor for sure. We I tried not to let the moment become overwhelming, because it could easily become overwhelming. Just walking those
Yeah.
streets and walking the beach and seeing all the plaques and the memorials and the flags and the magnitude of the sacrifice that went on there was enormous. And also and not for nothing, it was a bit nerve wracking playing for the future King of England and the Prime Minister of Canada and the Prime Minister of France and the remainder of the Canadian World War II vets that are left. They made the trip over as well. And so it was a great honor to be there. I'm glad we didn't screw it up. I'm glad there was no broken strings. I'm glad the mics worked. Glad I didn't trip. All those things you worry about when things are live. But at the end of the day, just humbled to have been a part of that ceremony, and to visit that area of France, which I'd never been to
I
before.
went there when I was a teenager, and it is it's kind of like when I visited the 9/11 memorial as well. It's like this kind of like empty, quiet feeling you get when you're around there. Like the magnitude of that spot. So yeah, for you guys as a band, that's amazing.
100%. Yeah, it was really really a special thing to be part of. Yeah, and we were just happy to be asked, and again, glad
Yeah.
we didn't screw it up.
How do you get involved with something like that? Is that like the Canadian government reaching out and being like, "Hey, we want you guys to do this," or
There was a lady, and I didn't know this until we got over there, but there was a lady from Veteran Affairs who's from PEI,
yeah,
who is a big fan of ours and of the song, and thought it would be very fitting to have us there to play that song. So they reached out and invited us to come.
Every year when when Remembrance Day comes around, that's the song we rip at right at 11 o'clock here. So when I saw it, I was like, man, that is crazy.
Yeah.
You mentioned recording and demoing a lot during the pandemic and stuff. What's coming up next for you guys after this run of Canadian shows? Are you guys planning to keep her going, hit the road, maybe a new album type deal?
New album time. We hope to have at least a single out by the end of the summer. Don't quote me on that. We're still working out the details, but that's the sort of idea, to get a single out there, and then a few others, and then at some point drop a record. So we have a lot of stuff. We've just been trying to figure out how to tie a nice bow on it and make it sound like one record. We spent most of 23 recording, but in different studios and different environments with different people. So it's not the most cohesive collection just yet, but we're still chipping away, and I think we feel really good about a handful of them. So hoping to put one of them out soon.
It's interesting, when you go into a different recording session, do you get a different vibe just based on like where you are in terms of location and also just like you personally? I've always been curious. I've never recorded music before, but you can see tone shifts between different locations and stuff.
Yeah, well, certainly studios have a big impact, depending on the gear that they have, depending on the room, the size of the room, the shape of the room. And then the headspace of the band is also a big thing. And I always liked when we were sort of away from home and sort of under one roof for an extended period, because then you can sort of really focus on what you're there to do. It's tough when you're commuting in and out and you're trying to balance, home life and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, so the headspace of the band is a factor, but mostly equipment, room, like producer, who you bring in for producer and engineer is huge, because that's a big part of the creative process, is bouncing ideas off of that sounding board. So that can make a huge difference.
This Bose show is coming up, Canada Day long weekend. You guys are also playing Leduc on the 1st as well. I wanted to ask, in terms of Canadian music that's like kind of meant the most to you, what's been the most influential for you as a musician? And it can even be like back to the beginning of you guys as a band and now, if there's been any differences on it.
I mean, I think I would have to say the Tragically Hip, as unoriginal as that might sound coming from a fellow Canadian rock band. But I mean, they really did hit me at the right time. I was in high school and we were just starting our band. And to me, they seemed like a great blueprint for how to do it the right way. They were road dogs, but they also took great pride in their craft and their art, and they made great records. And then through our journey, getting to know those guys and just knowing what kind and decent human beings they all were and are, had a profound impact on us as a band. Like you can do this and not be a dick. Who knew?
Crazy, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that they had a big impact, and I mean, as far as Canadian music having an influence and an impact, I mean, there's Neil Young, and then there's the band, and there's Gordon Lightfoot, and there's Leonard Cohen, and it's a pretty long list. And then you go into the 90s and you have guys like Big Sugar and, people that ended up having an enormous influence. But I think the hip sort of reigns supreme just for all the reasons I just stated there.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the default answer for most Canadian musicians, right? Like the hip are so influential, right? Like, even back to when I was a kid, that was probably the first Canadian band I was ever listening to. And I was born in the late 90s. It shows the reach that they've got. So
we were starting this band in the late 90s. So
sorry to date you there a little bit.
It's all right.
Amazing. Well, we're so stoked to see you at Bose on the 30th, and best of luck with the show. And we're stoked to hear the new material, man.
All right, Sam. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah. Thank you, man.